I've written about a lot of past occurrences in my life on my blog, and I've talked about a few on videos here that I posted on YouTube. For whatever reason, it seems to me that when I post a video, it's more effective somehow than writing on my blog. Why that is, I don't know. I know someone suggested me telling my story in video on YouTube. You know what the difference is, I'm not sure. As I said, no one ever acknowledges me. The police ignore me. San Francisco firemen push me around in doctors' offices, etc. And I think regarding what's actually going on, there's a lot of confusion among a lot of people. And it's possible that maybe this video will clear some of that up, and everybody will kind of figure out what's actually going on. You know, I've looked back at my life and I've seen some strange occurrences that are kind of interconnected and I didn't know at the time. One is that a series of women who had knowledge of my identity, the identity of my birth parents, entered my life with a goal of marriage surreptitiously because I stand to inherit a very, very large sum of money, which is why most or all of this is happening. I had a toy stuffed animal when I was a kid. It was a very sad-looking dog named Lonesome, and I've learned that that's part of a loneliness brainwashing experiment. I've learned that there are people involved who know where I'm going to be and know what I'm going to do before I do it. I've been unable to obtain employment, et cetera, et cetera. And I've seen some other things in my life that all seem to point to one certain truth. And you know what? If my life really is the Truman Show and the Truman Show is based on me, then none of this means anything. And this video will be insignificant. And if that's the case, then nothing I do matters. If my life isn't the Truman Show, then I would say that everybody should pay close attention to what I'm about to say. First, I'll refresh you on a few very important points. You know, before I ever found the New Republic article about loneliness and figured out that I'd been the subject of anti-American and socialist brainwashing, before I ever knew anything about that, when things were really, really bizarre in my life and I was getting stalked constantly, I had figured out two things just by kind of adding up some of the things that were happening. That A, someone was trying to turn me gay, and I'd also guessed that they were trying to turn me into a pedophile. Now, I have proof that the internet was being used to bait me into clicking on child pornography links, starting with odd results in Google Images. Okay, that leads to websites that, as you click through certain links in the website, leads to videos of girls that are younger and younger. Has videos of icons of young girls mixed in with videos that clearly show adults on websites that show adults appearing in pornography. There are clips mixed in of young girls, etc. So someone who has no intention of looking at underage models could end up clicking on them without even knowing it. And I think the worst thing of all are the mixed and matched photographs on icons that are, you know, where you might click on at certain sites. They'll have an adult woman's face on a teenager's body or vice versa. You know, there's a lot of that mixed and matched part. It's close-ups that make the age ambiguous, etc., etc. And the video that I made about that last year sometime proves it pretty clearly. So now I'm going to tell you a couple things, and we'll see if something doesn't change. When I was living in New York, when I was about 28 or 29, I think it was 98 or 99, I was downtown for some reason, or maybe just somewhere just in that area around Union Square in the Village. I'm not sure. I dropped off a resume for a job or something. I think it was when I was working at Donald and Ricano, and Stu ended up calling me to go take the job at VH1. I had dropped off a resume somewhere, and then I stopped into a bar for a beer. And I wrote about this on my blog, I believe. A guy stopped in with a woman, and they sat down next to me. I think he was in his mid-40s. She was probably about 23. She had bleached blonde hair, and she was, you know, considerably attractive. And, you know, he struck up a conversation with me, and during the whole conversation, he took on a very intimidating stance. Like he was being this kind of passive-aggressive, hostile intimidation that's been the norm in my life for quite a few years. And he said that he was a film director or a filmmaker, and he asked, he was asking me if I wanted to become an actor. He was saying that he could make me an actor, and all this stuff. And I just kept saying, no, I'm not interested in being an actor. And like I said, he was being very intimidating and hostile. And all the time, the woman that was with him was sitting on the other side, and a couple times she kind of looked at me and smiled. It was like, gave me one of those. And I forget how the whole encounter ended, but like I said, he was trying to intimidate me. And it wasn't until a couple years ago that I realized that they were recruiting me for pornography. Now, which is pretty obvious. Like I said, he was in his 40s, she was in her early 20s. So there you have it. Now, I'm going to tell you about another incident that I don't believe I've written about yet on my blog that I am compelled to conclude is semi-connected to the incident I just described that took place in New York. I started out in college at Nicholls State University in Thibodaux, Louisiana. And during my first year there, I went on spring break with 3 buddies who were soccer players. Their names were Dwayne, Pete, and Paul. So that was Dwayne and Peter, Paul, and John going on spring break together. Which reminds me, I've been reading the Pope John Paul II's encyclical that he released right after he became Pope. And I didn't know until now that there was never a Pope John Paul until the Pope who immediately preceded him, who had a very, very brief pontificate. It was less than a year. And that was in 76, So the first Pope John Paul was in 76, and Pope Francis is the first Pope to ever take the name Francis. And John Paul Francis here, who has a blog post about anti-Christian brainwashing, was born in 1970. I don't know. I doubt there's anything to that, though. But anyway, Dwayne, John, Peter, and Paul went to spring break together. And, those guys all knew people all around Florida. They had friends and family, etc., in different places all over the state. And, I think we were gone for 10 days. We started out in New Orleans, and we pretty much went to a different beach every day. It was the kind of thing you could make a movie out of. We basically toured Florida as far south as Fort Lauderdale or Cocoa Beach, whichever one the farthest south was, I don't remember. But it was a heck of a trip. And one of my friends, I think it was Pete, had a friend who was working at Disney World in Orlando. Now, at the time, and I'm sure they still do it, Disney World had seasonal employees for spring and summer. I think the age range is 16 to 26, or maybe 18 to 26. I don't recall. But they actually have a campus type setup where they have dorms where they live. They give them room and board and everything. And it's mainly for college students, between semesters, etc. And this friend of Pete's was one of those, and we stayed in one of those dorms that night. And we were all kind of hanging out, and we were drinking beer like you do on spring break. And one of the women there, and I'm not sure if it was the woman who lived there, she may have lived there, I don't remember, or she may have been a friend of Pete's friend who lived there, I don't recall exactly. But, while we were all hanging out drinking, she started to express, romantic interest in me. And we started talking, and 19-year-olds on spring break, they're kind of hoping for such hookups. And I recall thinking that the way that she approached me was strange, but again, when you're 19, you don't question these kind of things. But the way she approached me was strange. Like, in a usual such encounter, there's this kind of, build up to it where neither party knows what's going to happen, etc. But she seemed very, very matter-of-fact about it. And in hindsight, it occurred to me that it seemed like maybe she was even acting. And it just all kind of started out of the blue with her. And I knew something was strange then, like so many other occurrences in my life, but I had no idea what was going on. And again, you don't question those things. But it was all just kind of odd. It was not the way those encounters usually go. And sure enough, without the usual kind of lead up to it, we ended up in her bedroom, and she performed oral sex on me, and she was very proficient at it. And the way things ended after that were very strange as well. She seemed kind of detached. And as I said, in hindsight, it became clear to me that, it was like she was acting. And, knowing what I know now, and I think about that experience in New York that I just talked about, I have no choice but to conclude that she was auditioning me for pornography as well. And I would be shocked to find that incident and the incident in the bar in New York aren't related. So, I'm not trying to indict Disney. I don't know that I'm not indicting Disney. Who knows who gets in there? Like I said, I'm not sure if she lived there, if she was a friend of someone who lived there. But she may have been. But I don't know that, I think there are a lot of people say weird things about Disney. And I just want to be very clear that, I am not indicting Disney. I think chances are very strong that they don't know that these kind of things go on. But I'll tell you, now that I've gained an understanding of how the police work, and I've realized that I've been framed for pedophilia, and that there are people trying to turn me into a pedophile, and monitoring and policing everything I do, including what I look at, I'll tell you, I would be shocked. I would be shocked to think that Florida authorities don't know about it. Now, one other thing I might add that I've mentioned before is that I have, concluded that, my brainwashing and all the experiment that's been done to me that started when I was 6 years old with the toy stuffed animal, sad-looking dog named Lonesome, everything that happened at Toledo, another strange coincidence with loneliness studies, that it's all part of this brainwashing thing that I am quite sure is meant to drive people to end up in San Francisco from all over the country. Now, among other things that I'm going to talk about later, about that are ingrained in the homeless system here, aside from that, there is, some adult film industry here in San Francisco. There's a place called, there's a website called kink.com, and there's a place here, I forget what the name of it is, but it's an old armory. It's like a really old building that kind of sort of looks like a castle, but not really. It's like it's an old military facility or something, and they turned it into like a place where they make sex movies, etc. There's a general theme of lasciviousness here that's pretty strong, and if you go online, you can find some of those videos that are made here. Like I said, I think I saw one on kink.com, and I'm quite positive that everything that's happened to me that started a long time ago is done with the intention of me ending up in San Francisco, where socialist anti-American brainwashing starts, and it's also where they finish you off after they started at different points all around the country, because they know people who end up in indigent and whatever. Many of them come here from all over the country. They have an influx of it. They have a flood of people coming from all over the country. And some of them bounce out and end up in outer-lying suburbs and small towns and everything. But I don't think it's a coincidence. Everything that I put in this video about the points where I was being recruited for pornography and then ended up in San Francisco, where they're definitely making some porn.